2 seconds ago, you were saying unless Black children are raised by a decent mom and dad who are married.
That's true, because when I was growing up, Black people were like a decent people then, and so they respected the order. They got married.
What year did you grow up, sir?
I'm 72.
Are you a baby boomer?
I'm 72 right now.
Part of the boomer group. Okay, so you're part of the last Jim Crow generation, right?
And
you grew up doing Jim Crow,
under the
and I think your whole generation needs some counseling. Y'all grew up doing Jim Crow.
I grew up under the Jim Crow law, and Black people were better off then because they loved God and they respected the order. If a Black woman got pregnant out of wedlock, it was an embarrassment to the family. She would have to have a shotgun wet or go and hide. But Black people are not more like that anymore. They're just crazy. They are blaming and begging and whining and trying to take from the white people. And I'm surprised to see the Blacks act that way because they were more independent.
The Blacks, because you know you're Black too. When you're talking about the Blacks, I think Mr. Jesse Lee Peterson, as someone who grew up during the Jim Crow generation, I am not sure what it is that you are basing your belief on in terms of talking about morality, in terms of talking about how Black people were better off then. I think that we've had some difficult periods within our community, and I would definitely argue that Jim Crow was a difficult time for
it wasn't.
folks.
It was not.
The terror. Yes, it was. Because all the research shows it was. I'm telling my own father. I should get my father on the phone to talk to you because I think perhaps you are not remembering.
In the good old days, when Jim Crow existed, the Black people knew that it was the Democratic Party. The Jim Crow law was about keeping Blacks out of the Democratic Party, and that all white people were not against Black people. And as a result, the Blacks and the whites started the Republican Party because the Jim Crow Democratic Party did not want the Blacks to be a part of it. Do you believe that racism exists?
Okay, so let me start here, Mr. Peterson, because I think that you are confused and perhaps you're conflating things to fit whatever narrative that you have. You started off with, it's like, until Black people come back to God. And before that, it was Blacks are wild and out of control. And now it's about what's happening in the Democratic Party. Are you a Republican? Do you believe there's racism? I think that you and I probably will not be able to agree. I find your comments quite inflammatory.
What do you mean by that?
And almost, well, I think that you're saying these things to get a
they're
rise.
not true though, what I'm saying.
I cannot believe, as someone who has grown up under this American regime, who saw firsthand the impact of Jim Crow on the lives and the psyche and the emotional state of Black folks, someone who has seen with
but that's made up history. That's a rewriting of history. That's not true.
No, there's no rewriting of history. That's not what we're talking about. We're not rewriting history. I said, as someone who grew up under Jim Crow, which you did, as someone who was able to see the state and condition of Black folks in this country under Jim Crow, which you
I did not. No, that's not true.
You did. You cannot tell me that. So you never watched TV, you never read the newspaper, you never had any sense of what happened because you were growing up under this time. You never heard about lynchings, you never heard about Emmett Till, you never heard about the Civil Rights Movement, you never heard about the assassination of Dr. King, you never heard about the assassination of Malcolm X, you never heard about the assassination of Medgar Evers, you never heard about any of that.
I heard of those things.
If you never heard of any of that, then that's a problem.
I heard of those things, but it's nothing like what the Blacks are pretending that it was. It looked like the Blacks are using it for personal gain. So I want to ask you.
Using the civil rights movement for personal gain?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do we use the civil rights movement for personal gain?
The worst thing that ever happened to the Blacks were the civil rights movement.
The worst
when they did that,
the worst thing that ever happened to Black people
was the civil rights. Right, because let me tell you why. What the Blacks did was, prior to the civil rights movement, they didn't have a leader over them. God was their leader, and the parents were the leader of their children. But what the Blacks did, they allowed Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and all those guys to become their leaders, and so they sold them to the Democratic Party for the vote and agreeing that they would be the Black folks' leader. But Blacks never had leaders before those votes. But I got to ask you this.
Never had leaders before. I mean, the fact that in naming the leaders, You
Well,
said
they're
Jesse
the black people
Jackson.
leaders as a
and
result of
Reverend
the
Al
civil rights
Sharpton.
movement.
No, not the black. There were a number of black people who were leading. I'm thinking of Dorothy Ahide, who led the National Council of Negro Women. I'm thinking of Ella Baker, who helped to organize
Why are
SNCC and
black
did
people
training.
so weak they
I'm
need
thinking of
leaders?
Rosa
Why are they
Parks.
so weak they need a leader?
Okay. Okay, Mr. Peterson, I think that we have reached an end. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, but I do not think we're going to agree. And I am very concerned about the things you're saying, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, but I think I'm going to discontinue
Will
this
you at least do my
conversation.
hot seat before you go? I have a hot seat.
What's the hot seat?
I need you to answer these questions as quickly as possible. Okay? True or false? Black people always late.
Okay, goodbye, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Peterson.
What? That must be a yes. Amazing. She put her tail between her legs and ran. What the? That was Dr. Kaye Whitehead, Associate Professor of Communication and African American Study at Loyola, Marymount, University of Marymount. If y'all see her running down the road, ask her why did she run from TheFallenState, Jesse Lee Peterson, all right? But she gone now. I didn't use a prayer for her no more. She gone.